I'm a dancer, have a dog, and like the color yellow. One day, my mom noticed, not for the first time, that I was constantly clearing my throat and hiccuping. Thinking I had a severe reflux or other esophagus-based issue, she took me to see a gastrologist. I went on medication, had an endoscopy, and was even given tubes down my throat for 24 hours to get to the root of the issue. When none of the tests came back positive, my doctor recommended I see a neurologist. Not many people in the United States have Tourette's, less than 3% of the population. Apparently, I'm one of the few.
I love sports, school, dogs, and last but certainly not least, food. When I was 5, my mom first noticed that I was blinking rapidly. It wasn't something that I could control, just the same as when you need to sneeze. As I got older, I developed vocal tics and was diagnosed with Tourette's. While coping and managing my tics should have been the hardest part of my journey, sadly, it was not. Throughout middle school, as my tics got worse, more and more kids started to notice. But they didn't just notice. They mimicked, teased, and mocked. One of the worst times I remember was when I was in 5th grade. I had to take a choir class with the entire grade. Singing had always been something that was stressful and anxiety-provoking for me. But one class, I remember my tics were especially bad. I was trying my best to hold them in, as I had always done, but that day, it didn't work. I thought that as long as I did not let out any vocal tics, maybe no one would notice. But someone did notice. Actually, the entire class noticed. But what hurt me the most was not that my friends were the first to notice, but that they were the first to make fun of me. To this day, these comments constantly replay in my head. Avery, you look like a bunny rabbit. Guys, look, I can do it too. Oh my God, Avery, why are you doing that? And guys, this is so funny. It wasn't funny. So the entire class was laughing at me, twitching their noses, blinking as fast as they could, and copying every tic I had. When the teacher noticed, it would stop. Or so I thought. Instead of telling the other kids to stop, she told me to stop, and then told me to leave the room. I ran down the hall as fast as I could, out of that stupid classroom holding back tears. I sprinted to the single-cell bathroom and locked myself in. I was finally alone. Despite only being 4'6" at the time, I had never felt smaller in my life. I felt alone, shameful, and like something was wrong with me. I felt like no one understood me, and the people who were supposed to build me up were the first ones to break me down.
When I was 9, I went on a weekend trip with my Girl Scout troop. We went to an amusement park where we all slept in the same room and you had to buddy up to pick a bunk bed. I remember we were celebrating the birthday of one of the girls, and for some reason, I could not stop ticking. Most nights, I could control it, but I was just so excited to be having what was at the time my first sleepover. The girls were curious. I explained that I couldn't control my hands, that I had Tourette's. At first, they just stared at me blankly, asked a few clarifying questions, then left me alone. It was the first time after my diagnosis that my tics had been so obvious, and at first I was nervous about opening up. If anything, I felt relieved after telling them. It was much easier than trying to hide or suppress my tics. I was finally seen. In high school was the first time either of us had met someone else with Tourette's. Finally, we felt like we weren't alone on our journeys.
Listening to Hannah's experiences led me to be more open about mine. I realized I did not need to shout everyone out. I didn't need to pretend that getting through the day was easy, and I did not have to hide that every part of my body wanted to slap, twitch, or shout.
Bonding over our shared struggles was one of the things that brought us together, despite realizing that many of our stories had different outcomes.
While Tourette's affects everyone differently, as with any mental health disorder, we wonder if there was another reason that our stories are so different.
I was extremely open about the fact that I had Tourette's. One of my tics is tensing up and shaking. People would always ask, "Are you cold?" Instead of lying and saying yes, I told them it was a tic. When they stared at me blankly or raised their eyebrows in shock, I would tell them something fires in my brain that makes my muscles need to twitch. I educated the people around me, and in doing so, built a support system around myself of people who could empathize with my experience.
I, however, was not so open. I didn't really ever tell anyone about my Tourette's. Normally, all my energy was used trying to stop something I could not control. I worried if people found out that they would treat me differently. Because of this, no one could understand what I was going through. No one could help me. My friends and peers didn't know the reason I was twitching or muttering random phrases wasn't for attention and giggles. Teachers did not know the reason why I left their class multiple times a day wasn't because I was irresponsible and didn't care, but because I didn't want to shout the F-bomb or a silly phrase I knew would get the whole class staring and laughing just like that awful day in choir that replayed in my head. Because I didn't want to hit, kick, or whack the person next to me, and because I didn't want to hit my head like a sledgehammer on my hard metal desk.
The effects mental stigma can have aren't exclusive to Tourette's. According to the CDC, more than 50% of people will be diagnosed with a mental illness or disorder at some point in their lifetime. According to the Mental Health Foundation, nearly 9 out of 10 people with a mental illness feel stigma and discrimination negatively impact their lives.
When over half the population struggles with a mental health disorder, why is this something so heavily stigmatized and ostracizing? Why as a society have we not come together to support and help one another instead of tearing people down? And why should half of the population feel inadequate and alone in society because of outdated stereotypes?
Battling not only the struggles of a mental disorder, but also the societal consequences, is difficult enough for the average adult. Yet 1 in 5 children, either currently or at some point in their lifetime, will have a seriously debilitating mental illness. Even as a kid, I advocated for myself often, but I would not be as confident, happy, or well-adapted of a person as I am today had I not had a strong support base of people willing to listen and learn. If someone you know opens up about their neurodivergent experience, the best thing that you can do is listen and research what they've opened up to you about.
If we educate ourselves one person at a time, we can eliminate stigma around mental health and build a culture where kids like us can open up and feel like they're not isolated for something out of our control.
Thank you.